Hey everybody, good morning, happy Sunday. I am here in the basement and I am talking to a camera in my basement with a light on and a microphone, and I'm making something. I don't even know what this is. Is it a video? Is it a blog, vlog, podcast? Right? What is this? I don't know what this is. But anytime you try to do anything, as soon as you start putting it out there in the world, right, the thing that starts firing in my mind, maybe in your mind too, is that self-doubt. The critic starts just going up to 10. What do you have to say? It's pointless. Who cares? Who cares about your opinion? Who cares about your ideas? Your ideas aren't smart. They're not innovative. They're not powerful. You are a pseudo-intellectual. Why does it matter? It's easier just to sit around on Sunday morning and have a lazy Sunday. But for some reason, I feel compelled to put this stuff out here. So I am putting myself out here, and I am sharing some stuff that I've thought about for a long time. Some of the stuff I've thought about for 25 plus years. And so this morning I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about imposter syndrome, and I want to talk about broken hips. And I want to see if we can pull those two ideas together. But let's start with the imposter, because I think we all have it to a certain degree. And we've all had those moments where that thing inside of us just starts screaming and barking at us and says, it's never going to change. Nothing is going to get better. You are not smart enough, strong enough, good looking enough. You aren't wealthy enough. You aren't successful enough. They don't love you enough. If they really knew who you were, they wouldn't love you anymore. You can't do anything about it. What's the point? You're one person. There's 350 million people in this country. What are you going to do about it, right? Those tapes play on and on and on and on. And we get to those things where we want to do something. We want to plant a garden, start a hobby. We want to run for school board president. We see some injustice out there in the world, and we say, I want to do something, but what can I do? That's the critic. And I was watching this YouTube video the other day by this guy named Tom Bukovac, who is a tremendous session player in Nashville, killer guitar player. He's played on all of the hit records in Nashville for 25 plus years. Amazing guitar player. And in COVID, he didn't have session jobs, so he just started turning on his phone and talking to the camera, and it's like gold. And if you're into guitar stuff, definitely check it out. But a couple weeks ago, he does this thing, he plays guitar, and he just talks about stuff. And sometimes it's music, sometimes it's like old guitars he's buying. And today he opens up and says, he plays this thing and he says, since the divorce, you've lost it. You're not yourself. You're a shell of what you were. You're not talented enough. You're peaked. You're over the hill. And he just starts listing out all these kind of devastating critiques. And he hits the punchline and it says, this isn't the YouTube comments that say this. This is my inner voice saying this to me all the time. And it's just this moment of transparency that doesn't happen in YouTube like this. And I was just blown away, because that Tom is the 1% of the 1%. Like, the dude hasn't made it. He is talented. He is successful. You know, guys want to be him type of thing, right? Like, he's accomplished, and yet he's giving voice to the voice we all have that says you are not enough. And I look at my own life and say, how powerful is that tape in my life? What haven't I done because that tape is playing in my head? No matter where you are, what stage, that feeling of inadequacy drives all of us. And we do a lot of things to protect it, right? We project, we curate. We're making this false enrich sense of self, because if someone knew the real truth about who we were, then they wouldn't like us anymore. We wouldn't get the job. We wouldn't feel accomplished. We might have to sit alone with these thoughts and come to terms with them, right? Like some real raw stuff. And so I just want to talk about imposter syndrome because it's something I wrestle with very, very powerfully in my life. And, I've worked through, I am nowhere cure on this one. This one I'm still actively wrestling with. But two things. First thing is there is power in just naming it. I had some pretty radically transformative experiences in my life centered around telling someone about a struggle I had. One time I was in high school and I had a group of friends and I told them a deep, dark secret. And I said, guys, I know I'm the only one, but I struggle with this. And all the other guys said, me too. And it was this very powerful moment for me where I felt that burden go away, like right away, because I had wrestled with it privately and not told anyone. And it was warding over me because it was a secret. And that critic voice that we have, oftentimes we deal with that privately because it is hard to talk about this stuff. It is hard to say to someone, hey, I really want to do X, but I can't get over myself yelling at me to not do that. And so hopefully in your life, you have someone you can talk to, that you can bounce this stuff off of, that you can speak transparently with and say, hey, I am really struggling with this. Or I want to do this, but I don't think I'm qualified enough to do this. If you're into recovery movement, then one of the things you can hear in recovery is that you're only as sick as your darkest secret. And the voice, the critic, really gets very loud when it's just you fighting that battle. But when you bring people along, then all of a sudden you don't hear that voice as loudly, or they can speak truth into your life and say, hey, it's not that way. That is a false accusation and you shouldn't believe it, type of thing. So name it. Second thing is the critic only has as much power as we can give the critic. A critic is not creation. The critic is the person that comes and comments, criticizes, whether it be, food or a movie or music, or comments on a post, or someone saying to you, that dress is kind of weird looking, that type of thing. That critic, that thing we give it power. And there's numerous reasons psychologically that it does. But, you could, all the accolades, you could be on stage and people are applauding everywhere and you focus on that one guy who's frowning with his arms crossed and says, bah humbug. And you're like, I can't stop thinking about that guy, not thousands of other people who've said that was an amazing job, right? That's all of us. And I heard a few months ago that negative comments instantly stick in our psyche, but positive comments, if we don't relish and think about them, if we don't engage with them and savor them, then they just slip right out. And that's the human condition, right? But I think understanding that you have to say that's just a critical voice, and it can be internal, it can be external. I am doing this because I have to do it, not for the critic. And it's that act of passion, that is sacred to me, of saying, I have this obligation. I feel so motivated, inspired, righteous. I feel angry, whatever it is, like that feeling of I have to do something about this. The critic isn't going to be the one who does something about it. You will be the one to do something about it. And To quote Taylor Swift, the haters are going to hate, but build something. This is not a promotion for my EP, but I put an EP out a week or two ago, and I wasn't planning on doing it. I've played music for a long time. I really enjoy it, but I am not good. You might say I'm not good at music. I'm okay, but I can't really sing very well. And there's a moment where you're about to say like, "Oh my gosh, I'm putting this out there in the world." That is scary because we all want to be affirmed and liked and part of the tribe and, et cetera, et cetera. Keep going down the list. But I just had to do this. I just said, I am putting this out there not for anything, not for success, fame, downloads, money. I am doing this because I have to do this. And that is freeing. But if you are, whatever your cause, like whatever your thing is, whatever you're trying to do, a hobby, a social issue, whatever the thing is that's motivating you, you just have to go out there and let the critics be damned and just say, this is for me. This is like, I really see it as I am like in the New Testament, Paul uses language of, I am pouring myself out as a drink offering, is what he says one time in using some language. And it's poetic to me in the sense of, I am pouring myself out here. And if that critical voice, either external or internal, comes up, I am doing this because it's a beautiful thing to do. So name it, just say, look, this is my struggle to just realize that the critic's role is just to critique and will never be a creator. So what does this have to do with broken hips? I want to focus on a story in the Bible. There's a story in the Old Testament, Genesis 32, about two brothers. And first brother's name is Esau. Second brother's name is Jacob. Esau is a big, burly, handsome guy. He's strong. He smells like the fields. He hunts. He is the masculine, guy that's out there. And his brother Jacob is not that. And in the text, it says that Esau was loved by his father and Jacob was loved by his mother. Small detail, right? But that detail opens up. There's so much in that subtlety, that little line, that speaks to family dynamic, right? This is, this story. This is like Steinbeck here. This is powerful, right? It is a story of love. It's a story of siblings and what siblings do to get love from their parent. And so Esau, he goes out there and he gets affirmation, attention, love from his father because of what he does. And Jacob learns and says, I can't do that. So he has to learn his way, and his way is through trickery and deception. And at one point, Esau comes back, he's hungry, and he sells his birthright for some food. But the main kind of thrust of what really changes these guys' life is that their father is dying. And the father calls Esau and says, hey, I'm going to die. Go hunt. Make me a meal. I'm going to bless you. And blessings back then weren't like wills these days. Like they had so much more power. And it was grossly lopsided. Like it wasn't fair. It wasn't like 50-50. It was this guy gets it all. This guy gets nothing. And there's a component outside of physicality to it. Like it's not just inheritance. It is like, there's like a spiritual component to it. It's more than just that. And so Esau leaves, and Jacob's mother, right, who loved Jacob more than Esau, says, this is our moment. And she calls Jacob and says, let's make this food, bring it in, pretend you're Esau, and get the blessing. So he's using the tools that he's learned to get love in his family, deception. He goes to his dad, and he's dressed. It says in there, he smells like animals, and he puts like fur on like his like skin, because Esau was a hairy guy. Weird, weird thing. But so his dad, who's blind at this point in his life, he grabs him, he smells him, and he touches him, and he's like, something's fishy. Are you sure you're Esau? He says, yes, I'm Esau. And he gives him the blessing, and Jacob leaves, and then Esau comes in, and they both realize at the moment what has happened, and it's this huge, painful moment. And it causes the story of these two brothers to separate. And Jacob goes and he runs. And he's running not purely because of what happened. Like the physical, like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to kill me because I just screwed him over. But he's running from guilt. And he leaves his home country. He goes and he gets married and all this stuff, and he has a different life, and that is his father-in-law eventually at one point decides to get at him, and so he has to leave and go back home. And there's this amazing story where right before Jacob is about to meet Esau that I want to talk about. So we got this whole family dynamic going on, and right before he's about to cross over, Jacob says, hey, let's make a plan here, right? He's using the tools he knows how to use. He's plotting. And he says, I'm going to send some animals beforehand to kind of smooth everything out. He's playing a game to try to make sure that he's alive. He thinks he's going to get killed. And so he sends out his family. He sends over his sons. He sends over all of his possessions. And he spends the night on the other side of the river. And he's going to cross over in the next morning. And this is where this story takes place. So, a few observations. One, he sends all his stuff over. He sends his possessions. So this is like his riches. Everything he's worked for is with him. He's stripped of that. He's by himself. He sends his children. This is his inheritance. And in a agricultural community, children play a very vital role in this. So sends all that stuff over. Sends his wife. Sends his love over. He's by himself, right? While the side tangent here, people can get so focused on the literality of these stories, but man, there's so much depth here that when you sit there and you kind of ponder, you're like, oh my gosh, the truth is not the literalness of this. It is the story that just that hits us at a gut level, and we're like, oh, that is my story and 1,000 other stories, right? These warring brothers, man, this is a classic archetype. So he's there, he's by himself, he's all alone, right? Like our hair should be standing on end, because these are all the signs of like something's happening. And he's by himself, and this man comes and they wrestle all night long. And the man sees that he can't win, and he touches him and he breaks his hip, and he changes his name from Jacob to Israel. That's the story. It's like a few lines, but there's so much there. So the first part, all alone, right? Spiritual experience often comes when we are stripped and alone. And when the darkest moments, the lonely nights of the soul, the times where the bottom of the barrel, right? Whatever metaphor you want to use for it, in those moments, we find true radiance. We find the light. The light is in the dark moments, right? Like, it's there. That's where the spiritual depth is. And oftentimes it takes losing all of those things, all of the things that we put up, right? All of the ego things that we say, well, my possessions, my status, my symbol, my wealth, my inheritance, all the things, like we build all of these pieces of armor, it's like, back in the early 2000s, there's that YouTube video where the guy's just putting all the t-shirts on, and he's just taking all the t-shirts off. It's like that. Like, we put all this stuff in to protect us. We, to a worldly, we curate all of this facade. And in those moments where that stuff is stripped away, that's where we find fresh spiritual radiance. That's where we find truth and light. All that stuff. So Jacob's in one of those moments. He's run his whole life. And he gets to a moment where he doesn't have anything and he's alone. And that's where he finds some spiritual breakthrough. Second point. So the man wrestles, and we say he wrestles all night, right? That's, we're not talking like WWE stuff, right? This isn't like headlocks and Greco-Roman grappling and stuff. The text is saying something that is more than literal here. It's that wrestling, that thing that I grew up very evangelical. I, was super conservative evangelical guy, right? When I was 16, I said I was going to be a minister. I walked down in front of an aisle with thousands of people and said, I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to go to the ends of the earth. And eventually it said, I'm going to become a pastor. And I remember just having so much certainty at that time of like, I know this. I know how this works. And part of it's, just being young and dumb and stupid, right? But also some of it is, I think if you grew up in the 90s evangelical culture, you were also sold a very small version of the world and of God. And for the past 25 years plus, I've been wrestling for a long time with this stuff of what is God, what is spirituality, what is the life of Jesus, what is he calling people to, what was his mission, all of those questions. And more so, and at times I've said, this is bullshit, and at other times I've said, this is it. And, people call it like deconstruction now, is like kind of the term for it. I've pulled it all apart, and I pull it all apart. And those times of wrestling where it's not about, for me, it's not about the answer, it's about the experience of wrestling with it. Because the answer is like a shortcut where, it's like someone hands you a piece of paper, you get that, my daughter's, she's about to go to college, and you get all that advice, at a young age, that's like, get a practical degree or, fill in the blank. And it's like shortcuts people are giving to you. And maybe I'm just hard-headed, but part of life is, even though someone gives you a shortcut, you say, I got to kind of figure this out for myself. I think the same thing works for this, where that struggle, that fighting, that wrestling all night long is where we find spiritual breakthrough. And the other kind of component to it is it isn't the same for everybody. And what I mean by that is that we have these kind of places, I call them the broken places. We have these things, and this is like really par for the course for the hip discussion. We have those kind of broken places, like when a bone breaks and kind of fuses back together, there's kind of still that spot, right, where it broke. And when we wrestle with this stuff, like, we have those broken spots in our lives, and God fills that stuff back in, and you kind of have some insight, and you say, oh, I understand like this component of it. But that's a private, holy thing. And sometimes you can share that stuff, but like, that is your gift. That is the thing God has given you. I look back at my life, I look at all of the rough places, and while those were painful, somehow through those areas, those are where the wildflowers grow. And so when we have that experience of the wrestling, embrace it, smile. It can be difficult. You can lose your way. You can say, oh my gosh, the apple cart is turned over. I don't even know anymore. You're in a holy place when you're doing those things. So the wrestling, the guy says, I can't beat him. I can't beat Jacob. And he touches his hip and he breaks his hip. And for the rest of his life, Jacob walks with a broken hip. He walks with a limp because of it. And I think there's two things going on there. One is that God isn't interested in just dropping something out of the sky and saying, like, here it is. Here's the answer. He's interested in the wrestling. And then through the wrestling, it changes you. And you have a reminder for the rest of your life of that time. Connecting it to that critic, that voice of the critic. My inner critic is like, to quote Spinal Tap, mine goes to 11. Like it's like 11. It vacillates between 10.5 and 11 constantly. But God isn't healing me of that. That's my broken hip. That is that thing that which what he can provide a degree of relief from, but it is that thing of which that's my wound, and it's not healed. It is painful and it hurts, but it connects me to him. I was saying just a second ago about like we forever have those painful things. Like when you go through the wrestling, you get maimed. And when you get maimed, that is a physical reminder of that spiritual experience. And that is like a sacred, holy thing to me. I know that's not clean and that's not pretty. And I think it's true, right? Like I think that God isn't trying to put us in a microwave and push the plus 30 seconds and thing dings off and we say, oh God, we're so enlightened and we know so much and thank you God. When you pray for patience, God gives you really challenging situations that you have to learn patience in. And when you pray for peace, he gives you anxiety moments where it causes anxiety, right? Like that's the paradox. So when we are wounded, the light comes, the wildflowers grow in the darkest times, in the deepest darkness. That's where the true radiance comes from. That's where the spiritual breakthrough comes. But we don't go there because it's scary. That's the wrestling. To anybody who's out there struggling, who just either was given something that they can't stand anymore, but they feel something, somebody that is upside down with whatever, like there's other people. Like I have been through, the apple cart is always turned up for me. So if you're just kind of out there and you're like, man, I'm kind of doing a spacewalk here and I don't know what I'm tethered to, but I hear you. That's the wrestling. And I love it. So take courage, take faith, take hope. There is some tremendous truth to find, but you got to wrestle. So happy Sunday. Might see you again from the basement, might not.